This is Regenerative Skills, the podcast helping you to learn the skills and solutions to create an abundant and connected future. I'm your host, Oliver Gaucher. Through their diverse range of publications, New Society Publishers' books explore topics that are at the forefront of creating positive change in our world. From regenerative agriculture and permaculture to social justice and eco-conscious living, their books cover a wide spectrum of subjects that empower readers to lead more regenerative and fulfilling lives. Now, whether you're a seasoned environmentalist, a curious beginner, or someone simply seeking inspiration and guidance on your journey towards regenerative living, New Society Publishers is here to support you every step of the way. Now, exclusively for listeners of this podcast, you can use the code SKILLS25 and receive a 25% discount on all ebooks at newsociety.com. That's all one word and lowercase, SKILLS25 on all ebooks. So level up your knowledge today at newsociety.com. All right, so before we get started with today's episode with Jane Wegesa Fraser, I'd like to introduce you to my friend Alex Stinson, who's in Uruguay. And together we're going to be creating a series on, well, Alex, why don't you tell us how this idea came about and what we're going to be speaking about in a series of episodes?
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Alex. I'm obviously from the United States. You can probably tell from that accent, right? And I moved down to Uruguay at the beginning of the pandemic and didn't really have an intention to stay, but I ended up staying and I bought a farm. And as I've been developing the small 3-hectare property we have here, I've been learning that like a lot of the things that are conventional wisdom in either Europe or North America, some of them work. Some of them don't. And I've spent my whole life kind of working with communities around the world. So Oliver, as you know, I've worked with the Wikipedia community for most of 15 years now. And I'm always finding that the best ideas come from communities in the global south, in parts of the world that maybe aren't like deep into Wikipedia yet, because they kind of take this big vision, this big global idea, and they turn it into something that really works for them in their context. And so my hope, my idea, because I'm experiencing this kind of gap and friction, having come down to Uruguay, built a farm, is that maybe I can look around at the rest of the world and kind of learn some more things that I could either adapt, I could better understand my context, how it's both similar or different from the rural communities I knew in the US, but also similar or different to other parts of I'm going to say this word global south, not developing countries, because it's a really deliberate kind of approach, right? Like we're not talking about development in this case, even though we will talk about some of these issues. We're more talking about like the material conditions that were created in this part of the world by a series of processes, right? And we'll get into that more. And I think this first podcast actually highlights that quite a bit for me.
Sure. Well, before we get into today's episode, let's talk more about where the concept has come from our own personal experiences, because we've been chatting on the Discord forum for a while, along with quite a few other people, about how the conventional wisdom that we see on social media and YouTube videos about permaculture and all of these kind of clickbaity solutions that are going to, revive your soil or get your food forest established really fast, as we tap into the unending free resources that are wood chips and mulch and all of these other things. You and I have both lived and operated a lot in places where these free resources do not exist. They are absolutely valued and you have to pay for them, or they're not available at all. And this is very common for many other places around the world that don't have such material excess and consumerist culture the way you and I grew up with primarily.
Yeah, and the wood chips are a great example, right? So Uruguay has a kind of wood economy that was deliberately developed by the government here. We plant a bunch of eucalyptus and landscapes that don't need eucalyptus. It shouldn't be there. It destroys the ecology there. And they process all that wood into like firewood and wood chips to be exported, or wood chips and pulp to be exported back to Europe. This is like a very common dynamic anywhere in the global south where you look, where like some of the resources that should be abundant, right, the things that should create just this regenerative cycle are being sent other places. Maybe the economic conditions for those materials to exist at all aren't there, like importing tools. So here in Uruguay, everything that's imported has 35% tax on it because they're trying to protect the local economy, which means like some of the tools that when I was in the US would cost me like 15 bucks are sometimes $30, $40, and that adds up quickly. And so kind of thinking about how you work within the context you're operating in helps you think a lot more about this thing that like there's a podcast I listen to, Planet Critical, and the host, she often talks about how we don't necessarily need to scale up solutions, but scale out, like create the conditions for everyone to like adapt climate solutions, adapt regeneration to their context. And so sometimes, when you listen to someone else, like how they walk through solving a problem, it can help you say, okay, where do I look for that same system in my context? And I solve that same problem. The wood chips is a good example because now I've learned how to kind of look around at my neighbors and go, okay, you have biomass, you have biomass. I can't just order the wood chips. I actually have to go and like find it. And that's part of the conversation.
And yeah, so both of us have quite a bit of experience with this. Now that I'm established in Spain, it's not exactly an example of an extremely resource constrained area of the world, but where I came from in Guatemala before this and places that I've worked in the Philippines and Ecuador and Senegal have all had different degrees of scarcity of some of the things that we take for granted in Europe and the United States and other places that have resource abundance right now. And well, today's episode is with a dear friend of mine, Jane Wegesa Fraser, who has launched some incredible projects. And I've had an incredible window to see it from the beginning because she was a part of a module of an online course that we did together back when I was the restoration coordinator for ecosystem restoration communities, which is where I first got to know her. And seeing these concepts develop is part of the main thing that she outlines in the interview that we're going to get to in a minute. I'm curious to know what were some of your takeaways from this and what listeners can expect to learn from the conversation.
Yeah, having not been in the conversation, I wasn't sure what to expect. And I actually deliberately didn't do a lot of desk research so that I was just listening, right? And I was amazed at how much she took something that was like a personal passion and she made it a really humble project for the community, by the community, in the context of the community. One of the things we talk about in regeneration is you often need relationships, you need to think about networks and systems. And you can see how like she took a small project, which is a nursery, plant nursery, and I want to come back to that in a second, and grew it into this like network of change in the communities she wanted to work with. And at the same time, she's learning a lot about like where the skills or knowledge to do that change either exist or don't exist in the kind of government infrastructure around her and the communities she's working in. And she's kind of leaned on her international context like you to make those connections, to figure out where the knowledge is or figure out how to create the knowledge, because sometimes even the like basic data is not there.
And one thing to be aware of is Jane is working in Western Kenya near the border with, I'm blanking on it right now.
I think it's Uganda.
It's Uganda, yeah.
Yeah.
Working on the border with Uganda that has a lot of issues with drought. There are cultural context where grazing is extremely important. And there are a lot of people who are trying to maximize the number of cattle and goats, which has led to massive overgrazing in her area that has caused a lot of erosion. And I've seen pictures of this. I've kind of watched her identifying these problems and finding her way into navigating the difficulties of trying to change the cultural awareness of how this is not necessarily a blanketly good thing. And she talks a lot about how she's found success and a lot of barriers when confronting this truth.
Well, and I also think too, those barriers and those challenges are from like she sees them as things to work through because she has a deep-seated belief in the empowerment of women and economic empowerment, and ultimately those being part of the restored landscape. I think it was really neat that they started with a plant nursery, and you'll hear about this in a moment, because the plant nursery becomes this kind of a locus of community influence through youth, through women, through the men working in the community, and they all see value in that regenerative landscape at the end. And I think, for those of us who are either transplanting into other parts of the world and want to do demonstration projects, or those of us who want to be more influential in the communities we come from, it's really important to think like, what's those first steps that give me more and more access to the network and the community that can really make a change? So I'm really impressed, and I hope the listeners are too. I think it was a great conversation, Oliver, and I hope we get to have more of these conversations over the next, couple months.
Well, quickly before we go into the episode, why don't we outline some of the other things that we're hoping to explore through this series together? Because you've given me some great recommendations of people to reach out to and questions to ask here. I'll be conducting the interviews, but we'll be getting together to do the intros and bring some of our own experience and ideas into this as it develops.
Yeah, so one of the things that, I come from a Wikipedia background, right? And so I'm always zooming in and out between this hyper specific, like the size of a Wikipedia article, the final thing that someone's working on, right? And these macro systems, these bigger kind of ecologies that grow around the projects. And so I'm always interested at finding the people who like build the systems, like the interview today, we have a system builder who's like thinking about the whole community, but also some of the people that are actually implementing like the much smaller, like small landscape scale things. Like how are you actually getting biomass into your garden? What are you doing there? And I think when you zoom in and out at those levels, you start to understand better how the bits and pieces come together. So for example, I'm in Latin America with a lot of the conversations about agroecology. And I want to talk to folks in other parts of the Spanish-speaking Latin America and Brazil to better understand like how are you adapting these organic, these like ecosystem type approaches to a context where maybe it's more tropical, maybe it's more subtropical, maybe supply chains are different, right? And then, we agreed that we're going to try to go around the world to different regions that we have connections with. So I heard Latin America, I heard Africa, I heard Eastern Europe, and we're hoping to, like, if you have recommendations, dear listeners, like join us on the Discord channel and be like, this person's the person to talk to. Because I think, supply chains, skills, knowledge, connections, networks, all matter at different levels as we kind of build a global solution solve a global problem with local solutions that helps us build kind of networks of resilience.
Very well said. And that's exactly what I was going to outline just before we jump into the interview here, is that if anybody wants to participate in these unfolding series, there's quite a number that I'm going to be running throughout the season. And if you want to contribute to ongoing ones, if you have ideas of people who should be interviewed or highlighted in these episodes, please join us there. That's where we're having these conversations. And with that out of the way, let's go now to Jane. All right, so welcome, Jane. It's such a joy to get to talk to you again. We've been a little bit out of direct contact, but I have been gladly following the progress of your incredible projects in Kenya for the last couple of years since we were on a course together. But before we get into all the incredible progress that you and your colleagues have made, why don't we start from the beginning? Could you introduce yourself to the listeners, and we'll go into the concept that started this all?
Yeah, my name is Jane Wegesa Fraser, and I am from Kenya, and I am Kenyan. I'm inspired by, first of all, the degraded landscapes. I mean, I am inspired by my livelihood, my childhood. When I grew up, we had a very beautiful landscape where I grew up with forest and food and crop and so and we used to run around the home and just see a lot of biodiversity. I mean, like small animals, deers, squirrels, and all that. And it gave me a lot of childhood memories just to think about a very wonderful full-scale landscape where you have crop area, you have natural area, and you have paths, and you have roads, and you have all that. And it really motivated me to just think that that's a nice place to grow up. And of late, I have just seen a lot of devastation in landscapes in Kenya, whereby you go to places and you just see scorched sun and no land, no grasses and no trees, and just gullies and huge gullies forming because of erosion. And you look at it and wonder, I mean, how did this happen, or how did this get here? Because in my view, it must have been a nice landscape before it got to what it is today, like tattered land. So when I studied the ecosystem restoration design course, I was looking at how do I help communities realize how to restore this kind of landscapes that are so destroyed. And I didn't really know what this is going to get to. I was just starting to learn, to understand, because I meet communities that when I do trainings in permaculture and regenerative farming systems, I see communities that really have bad land that need restoration, and then you don't have the idea how you're going to deal with it. So getting into this ecosystem design course was a plus for me, and it gave me an insight on how I can read landscapes, I can understand landscapes, and I can also design landscapes. So when we got into the course and went through different modules, it was very exciting, and that's where I met you too. So it was very exciting with all these modules. And then I was thinking, how do I put this into practice, you know? So you're studying and you're looking around your country, looking around your community, looking around just where you live, what is here, what is happening. And with this course, you're just trying to go in your mind, you're just walking around and seeing different places and thinking, probably I could do this, probably I could do this. Probably I live in town, so I was like, probably I could do there was tiny forests, so I could do tiny forests in the suburbians. And then dry areas, and I was motivated by different videos that we watched during where people are restoring dry areas, and I was like, oh my God, this is very interesting. So I got into that and went to see a landscape in West Pokot, Kenya. West Pokot County is an arid area, and they are livestock keepers, and they keep a lot of livestock. They actually just keep a lot of livestock because they believe their wealth is in livestock, in cows, in goats, in sheep. And so they keep really a lot, like thousands and thousands for a family. A household could have like 3,000 cattle, and probably 1,000 goats, and 50 or 100, like 100 sheep. So
In these communities, the amount of livestock that a family had is basically their net worth, right? And even though
yeah,
acquiring them has maybe become easier, the impact on the landscape, this is something that I really remember from your participation in the course with ERC with us, was the incredible images of soil degradation and
Yeah.
erosion that has come from overgrazing the areas around that town, right?
Yeah. Overgrazing is so bad. So now you come to this community and you want to tell them that they are actually degrading their own landscape because of livestock. They don't like hearing that because they believe in keeping a lot of livestock. So you need a way to make them see that they need to grow food, just like they have children and they feed them. Then they should keep cows because they value them more than their daughters. So they should feed them as well, and they should have enough food to feed their cattle then. And then they should increase pasture on their lands, and they should do probably holistic management, which we also studied in the course. And I thought this would be a great idea for this community. But reducing their livestock was not going to be possible. So first of all, we need to start showing them how to manage the livestock that they have, and probably increase pasture on their land, and probably just do demonstrations with different people in community who have land, because they have communal land, they have vast lands that are degraded, so they are rendered unproductive. So we come into this land and create demonstrations that can show that you can restore and you can keep enough livestock, and probably even improve your stock, like the species of the animals you're keeping, probably keep improved species and reduce on local ones that do not have high market, and improve to better species that probably could fetch more money in the market, So we have improved cattle, we have improved goats, we have improved sheep, and so you're bringing in all this idea to just make them see that for them to really have a working landscape, an ecosystem that is actually sustainable for them and their cattle, they really need to embrace some of these activities. And some of the community members bought the idea. And so we said, we need a demonstration site. And one of the schools that is in this area, actually with about 500 to between 400, 500 students, pupils, and they walk like about 5 to 10 kilometers from communities coming to this school. That is starting from kindergarten to primary level. And they come because most of the time, because we have food at school and they don't have food at home. So they come to school because they want to eat something. And when there's no food at school, then they drop out. They don't come back to school the next day. So we thought if we do the demonstration, plant food for this school, probably some of the harvest can supplement the lack of food in the school, and it can sustain the school to have enough food to keep the kids in school, and also keep training the community as a site that they can learn a lot of activities, creating food forest, practicing permaculture designs, agroecology, improving soils, doing FMNR, farmer managed resource projects. And so we got into there, and then we looked at what are the needs of this community. So we realized they don't have potable water. They don't have enough pastures for their cattle. The land is so degraded, it needs restoration. And the school needs food. And there's no electricity. And it's really rural. There's no infrastructure at all.
Sure.
So we began with what we can do. So we mobilized the youth, mobilized the women, mobilized the men, and started doing a little bit of training with collaborating with different organizations that can offer us trainings. So we found World Vision that was willing to offer us training, the youth training for nursery management and propagation through the Kenya Forest Service. So we took about 20 youths to go and train. They went trained, they came back, and we set up a nursery for them. So they started propagating, gathering seedlings from the forest and propagating the trees in the nursery. We didn't have water then, so we said, now what do? We need water. So we talked to World Vision, and World Vision said, okay, we will provide water through gravity from the well to different designated areas and build tanks to hold this water so that the community can access potable water. And yes, World Vision actually did help us bring water distribute water from the well to 2, 3, 4 different designated areas where we have a deep, which is Kettle Deep, where they do treat cows when it comes to diseases, and then to a small center that had just begun, and then to other direction into our nursery in the school. Okay. So the nursery started getting enough water to water the trees, and we installed a tank there through World Vision. And so the nursery began. That was our first initial project. And then we said, now the demonstration site needs to be fenced off. And then we can start doing a little bit of tree planting and soil and water conservation measures. We had to create contours, plant vetiver grass on the contours, which partly vetiver grass was donated by me and my friend Bat. And so I went in to train now the community, the youth and the women, how to actually do contours on the land to slow down the runoff from the hills. The land is actually surrounded by lots of hills. And so we did a few contours, we planted vetiver grass on the contours. And so we had fenced off the area to keep away livestock from just destroying the vetiver grass that we are planting and the seedlings that we are propagating in the nursery. So the 10 acre land was actually fenced off by barbed wire and the bushes, thorny bushes, to just keep off everything from goats and stuff like that. And then they started seeing difference in the landscape between the demonstration side and the land that is not fenced off, it doesn't have contours, slowing down runoff. So they started getting interested to see, oh, so grass is growing here and not this other side. When during dry season, this bush of grass is growing in our sites, ground cover is regenerating, shrubs are coming up and fruits are flourishing. We have a lot of natural fruits in that demonstration site, small berries and other natural indigenous fruits that are just wild, and they're producing a lot. So they look at it like, oh, this place is starting to change. And so the community starts to get interested in the project. And so we start looking at what else can we do apart from just we have managed to slow down runoff, the people are getting interested. What else can we do? We need to look for more partners so that we can keep the momentum going. So we said we need to create economic activities that can boost them so that they don't have to engage in cutting down the trees, in harvesting sand, in burning charcoal and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so we took the men to train in beekeeping.
Nice.
Yeah. So the men went and got trained because we categorize them in different categories: the men, the youth, and the women.
Mm-hmm.
So the men went to be trained in beekeeping so that they can come back and be given beehives so that they can place this beehive in designated areas to start beekeeping projects. And we gave them hives, and they installed hives in different areas. And right now the hives are there. And so in this area where they installed the hives, we're using them to watch so that they don't cut down the trees in that area because they need it forested for the bees to thrive.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good idea because obviously you're dependent on livestock that is dependent on the health of the ecology. You're going to naturally care for the health of the ecology for the returns that you can get from it.
Yeah. So the men started questioning the youth and the women not to cut down trees for sales, which is a good thing, though in the areas where we are operating. But in the wider landscape, it's still bad. They're still degrading. But in the community, 17 villages where we are operating as Boma Ecologia Cañeros, those people have started telling, no, we can't cut trees. Let's install beehives instead. So they conserve the trees, they conserve the shrubs, they conserve the biodiversity of all the trees and everything that is growing there for the sake of the bees.
Yeah.
Which we realize is a good idea. So we said, 1 win, 2 win now. We have a nursery, we are propagating trees, and now we have the beehives, and the men are trying to slow down the cutting down of trees in this area. So we have the water. Those are 3 wins. We have the water coming down and actually installed, and now people can fetch water from now different spots. They don't have to walk a lot of miles to just fetch water. So women can have time for themselves to do something else apart from just all the time being on the road going to look for water far distances.
Yeah.
And so that helped us now to come to the area where we need to engage the women. So we looked for a partner, and through Regenerative, the organization that I work with right now, and they talked to an organization called Daughters for the Earth that actually fund such kind of projects. And they said, okay, we can apply for a grant through Daughters for the Earth. And so we did that, and this was for the women. We wanted to have women actually plant gardens for themselves, because right now they are going to about 35 kilometers to look for vegetables. And because they believe that the land is unproductive, they cannot farm. So seeing that we had trained about 10 women in our demonstration side to create kitchen gardens, and the kitchen gardens were thriving. They looked at it like, looks like we can plant actually vegetables and they can grow. How come these ones are not dying? Because of the system we are using. We're using actually half moon system in hugelculture kind of system where we are really putting a lot of manure and brown matter and logs down, and it's capturing a lot of water. Wherever little rainfall could come, we are capturing a lot of water. And so they realized, oh, this is working. So we taught them how to capture water from the landscape through these simple half-moon designs. And that's what is creating the kitchen gardens, and also through swells. So we create a swell, and then below the swell, we create above and below, we create small half moons. And these half moons actually now are capturing water. The excess goes into the swell and it spills back into the other half moons behind. And that's how they are capturing water in different aspects. So the women went through that training. We got about 56 women coming from 17 villages. And so we trained 5 TOTs to mobilize the 51 women, 3 from each village in 17 villages, so that we can now train them and empower them to create gardens. And so through this project, they created gardens, and everybody had a very nice fenced off, about an eighth or a quarter. Yeah, about an eighth, some quarters of an acre. And we fenced off with thorns and bushes, and so they cannot be destroyed by goats. And then we went in and planted the gardens. And the gardens produced a lot of crop. Like, they just don't know what to eat. They didn't have,
Good problems to have, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't have like 3 meals a day. Now they have like more than 3 meals a day. They can be able to cook more than 3 meals a day if they want to. And they have a lot of vegetables. They have potatoes, they have cassava, they have wheat, they have all these other crop that they need for food. That we are creating bananas. They didn't believe bananas would grow in these areas. We are doing banana circles. Banana circles are growing now. So they are like, we didn't think about doing banana circles because in the circle we have water in the middle and bananas on the circle and other crop like we put potatoes on the mold, and that's just makes the system vibrant with food. And we put cassava to a shade. And
It
then
sounds like every
vegetables.
season, new possibilities are coming. As the soil is enriched, as more water is harvested, it's just becoming better and better.
Better and better. And so we did this training last year, and the whole of last year, these women have been just blessed with vibrant, regenerative, organic gardens. We are gathering seeds. We gave them seeds to grow, and now we are gathering seeds to keep so that we can continue the gardens. They don't have to lack any seeds. They have biodiversity in their farms, and they just feel blessed.
And
Now,
you said they even started a market because they have so much surplus.
yeah, they have a small market now where they sell fresh fruits and fresh vegetables and fresh food. They do have. It's just
This is even becoming an
it's a new
economic
market.
alternative.
Yeah, it's a new market that started after we started the project.
Wow.
Yeah. In this area, what we are looking at in our vision is we want to create what we call a cattle market. This cattle market, we want to create a center where they can now come and sell their cows. The reason being, this is the conduit where stolen cattle pass through. It's the corridor from Kenyan stolen cattle to Uganda. So what we want to do is we want to create a market in this area, so that that's just on the border of Uganda and Kenya. So they can come and actually sell and buy from each other, create friendship and cohesion, but still it will be as a place where they can identify stolen animals if we put the system correct.
Yeah, bringing the attention in to serve multiple purposes there.
Yes. So if we create this market, then we'll minimize stealing because every cow that passes here, the owner will be identified through the system that they will create. And so if you don't have identification on you, you cannot sell your cow here. And so if you cannot sell your cow, if somebody says my cow is stolen, we'll look into the system and say, this cow was brought here by so, and you can come here and check if it is your cow and produce your identification, and we can identify the person who sold the cow. And then that will be, will get a little bit of theft, curbing a little bit of theft in this community.
Sure.
Because they are so focused. The Ugandans come in, steal cows, go, and then the Kenyans go to Uganda, steal cows, and bring. So it's a back and forth cattle wrestling kind of system. But this market can cap that because it will bring cohesion. And they'll have a common place where they can come and interact and look at their animals and just sell in an open area. So that's what we are focusing on doing in the future. And also the holistic grazing management.
Yeah.
We are now creating demonstration sites for farmers to try out to put minimal animals in a paddock pasture areas, whereby you can keep only a few animals and see and also replant and generate a lot of pastures in that. We are giving them drought-resistant pastures to grow so that they can be able to see and grow and see the difference between letting the cows meander from one place to another and being stolen on the way, and being in a place where you can yourself monitor and also monitor your land and make sure it's a healthy landscape.
Yeah.
So we are focusing on that too. So we have just started this year with a few farmers, but we are going to increase the number as we get more resources to give them the seeds, and also because they have to, what they produce is they have to produce the land and also fence it off from the other land, whereby livestock is not accessing the land in the first years of pasture growing. So they have to demarcate their land in pasture in paddocks, and then start planting the paddocks as per different seasons.
Sure. Yeah.
And let the animals get into the pastures and move around as per different seasons.
Right.
So we have just started practicing that, and we want to see how it goes. So
Jane, I gotta say, before we go into more detail about these projects, I'm absolutely blown away, not only by what you and your team have accomplished, but I think it's worth mentioning too that what we're talking about is a 4 to 5 year time span. Because when I first knew you and you were getting into the course, this was not that long ago. And I remember the sense of overwhelm that you were feeling with the challenges that your community was having and not being quite sure where to start, realizing that there were these opportunities. But one thing that I love about your example is how much time you spent in the community just observing. Because like you said, your original tactic of going and saying, oh, you should have less cattle because this is causing overgrazing was not well received. And instead, you took that learning and created a demonstration site to show what else is possible. Because as we both know very well at this point, going and telling people what to do often completely backfires. But if you can show a different possibility, that speaks way louder than advice.
Yep. When I got there, first of all, and the chief had called the community, and especially, in pastoral community, they're so patriarchal. And so they want the men, first of all, to hear and decide, and women will just sit aside and listen. So you're coming in this kind of mindset to start telling them how their cattle is degrading the landscape. You are not from this community. Yes, you are coming from the neighboring community, but culturally you are misplaced because you are a woman who is empowered. You are wearing trousers. You're standing in front of men, which is a disgrace. And you want to tell them how they need to improve their livelihoods and their community. They're looking at you like, really? This is what you want to tell us? So I come in and apologize and tell them, look, I know you guys, your women are so humble. They don't come in the community and start telling you what to do. But I'm coming here really humbled, really, really humbled, in the way that I want you to understand that I'm not coming here to ridicule what you do. I'm not coming here to say what you do is so bad or is bad in any way. I just want us to see how we can improve what we are doing and get better results from what we learn from each other. And so they said, okay. So I'm like, and don't mind about my trousers because I am going in the field and I fear caterpillars and that kind of stuff. So, and snakes. So I have to really protect my legs and protect my feet from getting bitten by insects. So don't worry about that. When I come next time and I'm not going to the field, I'll be wearing dresses. They just say, okay. They laugh at me. So we start from there and they realize I'm not coming to impose anything on them. So I asked them, so let's start from what are you seeing today that has changed from what used to be before? And there was one old guy who said, right now we don't have any water. The rivers are dry. And we don't know the reason why. But before we came back to our landscape, there was cattle rustling, a lot of cattle rustling, and therefore they had to move out of cañeros for safety purposes. And so this area was not inhabited for 40 years. And so now they have come back and they don't have anything. The only livelihood they have is their trees. And so they get into starting cutting trees and selling for livelihood. So now they realize few years later, not less than 10 years actually later, they realize that, oh, now the landscape is becoming bare and bare every single day. 40 years, it was a bush. You couldn't even walk in there because of this cattle rustling and nobody used to stay there. They had actually run away because of insecurity. They came back, they settled, there's no insecurity, governments brokered peace, and now there's security, and they came back and settled in their lands, back in their homes. And what do they have? Trees, indigenous grown trees. So how much does one tree produce? Maybe five bags of charcoal. Let's get that going. Let's get that going. So they cut down all the large trees. They cut down all the indigenous, good, beautiful, large trees. Yeah. And so they are realizing that where they're headed to a very dry community. Mm-hmm. And so the guy tells me, and we don't have a way in which we can feed our children. Even if we say we don't want to cut down the trees, what are our children going to feed? What are we going to give them? How are we gonna get money to buy sugar or buy anything else? They have cleared vast lands for planting corn and mostly corn and beans. Yeah. Which doesn't sustain because there's not enough rainfall to actually sustain a crop like corn in West Pokot. It's a semi-arid, so the rainfall will not sustain the kind of corn they're planting because they're planting hybrid, which was introduced by government, subsidized by government and politicians, and therefore the seed is not even working, it's not even producing. And so they embark on that every year, and they don't have a good harvest or a good yield. Yeah. So now you're telling them, let's go back to, first of all, indigenous short-time kind of corn that can be sustained by little rain and planted in a way that can sustain you. So they look at it like, okay, so we are coming back to original seed, indigenous seed, short span, 2 months, they are ready. And if we have a rain of 2-3 months, then that maize can be sustained and have a yield. And we're doing water harvesting systems so that we can have contours in our land, so that we can have plant maybe raised and sunken beds, so that we can maximize on capturing water and use manure for planting. So that gives them an idea like, okay, so starting from the beginning, they knew there was a problem, but they didn't know how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
So now they're seeing, with this demonstration site, they're seeing different aspects. And we are teaching them how to plant, to identify and plant crop that actually is drought resistant. Sunflower, for example, wheat and sorghum, for example. They're short-term crops that can use little rain, beans and different drought resistant beans. And we bring in cowpeas and all other crops that we think will thrive in this area. That's what we bring to the board. And so we give it to the locals, to the women. They start from small gardens, and then they realize, no, we can harvest from this small garden and then plant in bigger farms. And so they are starting to now generate seed for themselves so that they can plant in the bigger farms.
Now, in this journey, you have listed a lot of hurdles and difficulties that you are working to overcome, and some that you've successfully overcome. You mentioned the perception of being a woman. Promoting these ideas is already quite a big hurdle to overcome. You talked about this scarcity in your area that forces people to make whatever money they can off of degradation of their land and their resources. You've talked about lack of funding and lack of access to materials and resources to get projects going. Of all of these, what do you think has been the most difficult, or maybe still is the most difficult, that you're working on?
Well, first of all, the most difficult is when you're working in a community that is actually so patriarchal, and they believe women are not able to do much, and so they make their women so vulnerable in the sense that they cannot do anything for themselves. So we're coming in to bring an idea that women too can bring livelihoods, can improve household livelihoods. We're trying to make them see that they are not just so useless as you may look at them, but they can do something for themselves and for their families. And those men that are seeing changes in their homes, they're realizing, oh, we were just making these people be dependent, and yet they can depend on themselves. So bringing in ideas that can empower these household women to help increase household income helps the community to change their mindset and start embracing embracing their women in a different way, which they didn't see before. Because there was a place I went and said, I want to bring goats for the women so that their children are emaciated, and so that we can bring milk, dairy goats for the women. So these dairy goats will be managed by the women, and so they can sell the milk, a little bit of extra milk, feed the kids and sell a little bit of extra milk, so that they can be able to generate a little bit of money for themselves. And the men said, we cannot allow that. And I said, why? And they said, well, we don't want our women to be proud and rude and just feel like we just want them to be who they are, just obedient and low to the ground. You're nothing to these people. You just cattle is better than you. A cow actually is worth much more to that man than you are. That's how they feel.
It's really difficult. And unfortunately, I have heard this as too common of a cultural perception in many parts of the world. And one of the people that I most look up to in this type of work, Natalie Topa, I know you're aware of her work as well.
Yeah.
She talks about this constantly, how one of the biggest barriers in getting local community-led regeneration is getting past the perception and the cultural lack of value for a whole half of their population. And yet some of the most successful projects, and you're living proof of this, come from the women of these communities.
Yeah. So the women we have trained actually are showing a lot of importance in community, because they are doing their own work. They're generating their own income in their own farms, in their own backyards, and they're selling a lot of produce in the market, and they have income for their kids. And the husbands realize, okay, this is not so bad after all. I was worried for nothing. One of our TOTs had to build a house with iron sheets. She was living in a grass-thatched house. out of the resources she got, she had to put up a house because she's allergic to dust. And so with the grass thatched house, she's getting a lot of allergy attacks. So she had to put up an iron sheet house and put the floor and put cement on the floor so that the house doesn't have a lot of dust for her. She had to do that out of the resources. And the man was like, oh my God, this really is a good project. And the husband works in the nursery. He's among the youth leaders that are propagating trees in the nursery and mobilizing the youth to propagate the trees. So the benefits actually can be seen, and they realize, why were we making these people not even work for themselves? This is for the household. This is not for them. It's for all of us. It's for a household. And so they are starting to come out of that cocoon whereby they think women are useless and they can be sold off anytime to get cows, because that's what actually has hampered a lot of girls being pulled out of school to be sold off to older men for cows. And so these girls get there, they're young, they're naive, they don't know what to do, they don't know how to feed a family, they don't know how to do a garden, they don't know how to generate any income. And this man sits there and looks at you to feed him anyways. You build your own house, grass-thatched house, and then start looking for food to feed him every day. Where are you getting the food? You can't sell your goats because those are his goats. You can't sell the cow because those are his cows. And they keep the cows until when the drought comes, and then the cows die. They didn't even sell the cows to generate the income. So the perception and mindsets of these people really need to come to the now, from what used to be to the now. And start living in the now and taking kids and embracing women to do what they can do. Because these women are the ones that are tending to the land. They are the ones that are tending to livestock. They are the ones that are actually keeping the household. The men are just seated there. But any money any income that comes in belongs to him anyways. He can go and drink and come back and say, I need food. But where are you going to get the food? Why can't you let your woman find a way to find the food then?
Yeah.
So
I can only imagine how frustrating that must be.
No, but they kind of like, I would be frustrated so much in living in this kind of community. But the women in this community are so resilient, and I think they just accept to go with the flow. But those who have gotten a little bit of insight in how to grow food and regenerate income, they're really, really moving forward in a good way. And I appreciate that so much. So now we're giving them little kids like, let's rear chickens and ducks, and let's rear geese. We were giving them geese the other day to just keep us a group, so that as soon as they start generating a lot of geese, they can sell to market and keep money. We are teaching them to come together as groups so that they can do things as group of women, not a single person. So you come together to improve social cohesion. You come as a group, you start doing table banking. You sell your crops, you bring and store money because they don't have banks. You can come and have a group. And so you store money with the treasurer, and you have a treasurer, a chairman, and a secretary. So they're starting to do table banking, and they generate a lot of resources through these table banking systems.
Now, I want to go into how you got some of these smaller projects started, because you didn't have personal experience in, say, starting a nursery or running a food garden much before this, except for a few of your own little garden projects at your house. That's right?
Yeah.
And you had very little resources to get these things going. And yet at this point, your projects there, especially the nursery, are the ones that I often point to for other people in much wealthier situations who say, oh, we don't have enough money for tree planting projects. And yet your example is a fantastic one that really shows how much can be accomplished with few resources and even very little experience. Can you tell me how you got these off the ground?
Well, like I said, commitment is something that is very important when it comes to starting a project with no resources at all. So the local communities, since they realized they were already in a bad state of end of degradation, they are willing to start changing into a better way of living. And so that encouraged me to think, if we start with the youth, telling them, who are actually cutting down most of the trees, telling them that we want you to start gathering a little bit of seeds when you are in the forest, gather a few seeds in your pocket, come into this nursery, and let's start potting them. And taking them to this training, how to manage and propagate trees, was a plus for us. So they realized, oh, if we learn about this, then we can start doing it by ourselves. And we told them, well, when we get the nursery going, we don't have resources to pay you to do the nursery, but when we get the nursery going and we have trees in the nursery, we are able to sell these trees. You get a percentage of the share of the money we sell the trees, and the school gets a share, and Boma Ecology keeps a share, smaller share. So we came up and discussed with the youth and said, okay, fine. So you get 30%, the school gets, you get 30%, the school gets 40%, Boma Ecology gets 20% out of the produce of the trees we sell from this nursery. Now, where are we getting the seeds? We are getting the seeds from well-wishers, those we don't have in there. And mostly we are getting seeds from the women and the youth from the trees that are the surrounding. And these trees are all indigenous trees. So they are going to really adapt to this climate so quickly. And so we gathered manure from their farms. Everybody give us a little bit of manure, whatever you have, we'll be happy. So they gave us a little bit of manure here and there. They have a lot of goats, so you can carry as much as you can, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here. So we gathered the manure, brought them to the nursery site. Then we asked World Vision if they can install a tank for us to be able to irrigate the trees in the nursery for them to thrive during dry season, which they said, fine. That's an easy thing for us to do. We appreciated that. So then we started doing the nursery. We didn't need to pay the youth. We didn't need to pay anything. We got the tanks from World Vision as a donation, and then we bought the papers for potting, the pots, from resources from friends that donated. Pat donated something. What was it called? Abundant Earth gave us $500 that time.
That's right.
It went towards buying pots for the nursery, for the youth. And that's how we began. We didn't really need a lot of resources to begin. And then with that little resources, what we got, we fenced off the area to keep away the animals from destroying the trees.
And when it came to doing the gardens, I know you had learned different water and soil enhancing techniques, partly from the course and partly from your own research. How did you get these going and also select the types of vegetables that would do well in your system?
Well, I've done PDCs, and I've done through this course, ecosystem restoration design course. We did also permaculture principles there, and we did soil and water conservation, swales, different types. And so through that knowledge, I just went to practice. So I went on the ground myself to practice what I had learned. So I come here, we select a few people. Let's come and start to do a contour so that we can design a swale here. And so we come together, a few people. We're not paying them, but they are volunteering, and we are all volunteering from the community. And so some of the youth that have gone to school and can understand these things, we start from there, and we just design the landscape together. When it comes to crop selection, we work with CARI, Kenya Institute of Research, and in other local institutions to give us the best crops that can grow in this region. We have crops identified for arid and semi-arid areas. We have seeds identified for those areas. So we go into these databases and select all the crop that we look at that can thrive here. And we select diverse kind of crops. So we bring them on board, and then we plant them in the demonstration site and give a few as startups to the communities that are working with us. If they are women and they have gardens, we give them to go and start planting. Like potato vines, we get them from the nursery from Kari. And so we Kenya agricultural institutions. So we propagate those and then start dishing out to different farmers. We have our demonstration site actually is gathering a lot of seed, indigenous seed and other good, drought resistant crops that can actually adopt into this environment. So if they come there, they get these seeds, and then they get like potato vines, they go and start planting, come and get a little bit of probably cassava sticks from our demonstration site, and then you go and plant in your garden at home. So we are gathering from here. We have beans, we are harvesting, and then we give you a few seeds to go and start generating your own. Like that, we have nightshade, we have all these kind of vegetables, amaranth, and all that. It's local vegetables that are really nutritious. And so you get a little bit of seed, just small. Go and start like we have. So that's what we're doing right now. And we are actually identifying that through the data that we have through local government and other local NGOs that have worked in the area in similar environments, just doing relating with other people who are doing the same kind of projects in different areas, but with the same climatic conditions. And we share notes like that.
That's fantastic. I mean, nothing gives returns on investment like the living world. It's the best investment that you can make, especially if an area is starting to become degraded and lose its fertility. When you invest in natural reproduction, the possibilities of plant genetics and animals, it's incredible to see what can come out of that. But just starting with something as small as a seed.
It does.
Now, when it comes to access to information, obviously you've taken a lot of courses and your own research has really been fueling the projects that you're helping to make happen. Do you find that access to information for other members of your community is difficult or one of the barriers for progress there?
Finding information, especially when it comes to like government institutions, sometimes it's difficult. You really have to dig and go and visit and search and search. Sometimes you get, sometimes you don't get the information you need. Looking for example, extension officers from government offices that can help, for example, with trainings, and like Kenya Forest Service, which trains nursery propagation and management, tree propagation and management. Finding like this kind of people, it's really hectic and sometimes very difficult. But we have pushed, we have gotten a little bit of collaborations with this kind of people. Agricultural officer in government institutions are so backward, starting to backward systems whereby they're not evolving into the new technologies and new innovations that are coming up. They are not embracing new ideas that are coming up so fast or in a good pace. They're still so stuck into their original ways of doing things, and it becomes a little bit challenging to convince this kind of institution that you can move from industrial farming to regenerative farming. They don't see why you should do that. They are marketing seeds. They are supporting the government into making farmers as their primary market for seed and fertilizer.
Yeah.
So you're not removing that from the government. So it becomes so difficult to tell them to come and support you in a project whereby you're promoting non-fertilizer kind of system.
Yeah.
They realize you take
seed
away their
independence
clients.
and yeah.
Yeah, seed independence. and
There's
stuff like that.
no
Right
money
now,
for them to educate people to get off of the flywheel that keeps them dependent on these other industries.
No, right now it's even illegal in Kenya to share seeds. They'll sue you.
It is in so many other places as well, unfortunately. That is,
Yeah.
to me, kind of the
So
height of a dystopian future when you can no longer do the most simple and basic necessity of managing a landscape, which is sharing the genetic information and the seed potential of a place.
in my culture, when a woman got married, a girl got married, the mother actually gave them a seeds, I mean, certain seeds, in a hole for digging the land. That was the primary gift that you get from your mother as a woman getting married.
That's a beautiful
And
tradition.
and from that seed, they select a certain type of seed or species of seed, whereby it's going to actually become the like a genealogy kind of transfer
Yeah.
of seed from community. Because let's say I'm getting married to a different community, so I'm coming with seed from my community, which is a different tribe, and coming to this other community, which is a different tribe. They have their own food they sell and eat and grow. But I come with this particular one that is not there for my genealogy to know that this is where I originate from. And they name that seed after my tribe, for example. They name that seed after my tribe. So when they see that vegetable growing, you realize there is Wairimu here. And Wairimu, it was a bean, type of beans that came from Kikuyu land, from maybe Wairimu tribe. And you realize there is a Maragori cowpeas, and this Maragori cowpeas actually came from Maragori community. That cowpeas was grown in their community and it came to Bukusu land. So we have that kind of thing, and it was nice. But now if they're saying we cannot share seeds, they have just killed that kind of tradition, which is
that's
just
tragic.
yeah,
That's
very
really
tragic.
sad.
Very sad. So information when it comes to, for example, recently I was working with a friend. I don't know if you know him. He's from 100. They're called, what are they called? Landscape practitioners. He's on LinkedIn. He's called Michael Lin. They do landscape restoration.
I know
And
Michael
so
very well, yeah.
so Michael Lin was like, Jen, I want to help you project. And so I want you to give me a topographic map so that I can help you design the larger landscape of Cañeros. So I started looking for topographic map and I cannot get anywhere.
It's hard to find in a lot of places of the world. Yeah.
So now he says, so what we need to do is that we need to design our own topographic map, and we need a drone. Do you have drones that can go there? Topographic drones that can take landscape measurement, landscape data, stuff like that. I looked around for over 3 months. We never found any topographic person to go and fly a drone over Cañeros. So now we reach there, we are stuck, and then he goes, you know, there's this course called water and permaculture in Oregon University. I want to sponsor you for this course so that you can do the landscape topographic map by yourself. So I said, okay, dive in. So now I'm starting that course so that I can be able to do the landscape mapping and landscape topography design for this landscape in Cañeros. We still lack a lot of data collection tools. We can collect a little bit of data from people, old people here and there, like the history and everything. But we don't have like, if you want to identify species and that kind, we need tools to know how to use this kind of identifying species. We have, like, for example, species that are becoming extinct, those that are gazetted
endangered
that are being endangered species in this area. We would love to identify and also put them in record and put them up so that people can know. And so we can propagate those more because they are becoming extinct and things like those. And also just knowledge and more knowledge for this community is needed. So we're just looking at whatever we want. Well, the journey has begun, but we have a long way to go. We need partners, we need all this help, we need data collectors and systems and tools to collect data in a good way so that we can We can have it stored. If anybody wants to look at something, can look at, this is how it started, this is how it progressed, this is where it has reached. We haven't gotten there yet.
That's understandable. But though we have focused on a lot of the difficulties and the challenges that you have in your community, what do you think are the resources and the advantages that you uniquely have where you're working?
Well, the unique thing is that I love the community right now because they are looking at where they came from and looking at where they are and looking at, they want to go back to a healthier landscape and they're embracing it in a good way. And so I'm looking at if they are starting to change their mindset towards regenerative livelihoods, it's a good thing because this will change a lot of livestock keepers in Kenya, which is a majority probably of communities around are in dry and semi-arid areas, and they're all livestock keepers, and they're all with the same mindset of land belongs to no one, and you can take your cattle anywhere and just graze there and degrade the land. So as we start changing their mindset and starting to see that they need a healthy landscape and they need healthy cows, they need to keep a healthy landscape to keep healthy cows and keep their livelihood and also healthy families. It's something that I really feel is unique. And holistic grazing system has come up as a very important aspect when it comes to livestock keeping in Kenya, because livestock has degraded a lot of landscapes in Kenya. And if they can't stop and look back and change, then we still live in this calamity kind of lifestyle, whereby today you have a lot of rains, tomorrow you have drought, the next day you have floods, and we're just going around the whole system and there's nothing changing. So trying to change the community mindset is the most important and unique thing that we should do, because the government is not really helping a lot. All they do is remedy. Come in, there's calamity, there's floods. Yeah, we'll come in and build some man-shift kind of houses for you to stay in until the floods recede, and then you can go back to your own lifestyle. Give you blankets to keep you warm, and that's it. And give you a little bit of food to cook. That's it. When drought comes, we come in with foodstuffs from supermarkets, not growing from supermarkets. That's what the government, they thrive actually on calamity of communities. So they come in with food, portable food. This is what we have. We have come to give you aid because they raised alarm that Kenya has a calamity. It's a national calamity. We need support, and people everywhere came in and supported Kenya. And so they bought this portable food from the supermarket, dry cereal, and went to this community to give them because of drought. They have lost their cows. They have lost their livelihood. They have lost their loved ones to drought. They're not giving them information or knowledge to grow their own food, restore degraded landscape, or even just improve your soils to produce enough for you and your family. They're not doing that.
Instead, it's creating deeper dependency.
Yeah, creating deeper dependency. So going into these communities to change their mindset has been, for me, a very great inspiration. And when I see them coming out and really embracing the mindset shift, paradigm shift, in trying to want to live in a healthier ecosystem, healthier environment, healthier landscape, it really gives me the motivation to even do more. And it doesn't matter whether I'm getting paid or not paid, but just the smile of this lady who went in her garden and got a vegetable enough to cook for her children is just enough to keep me going. And I see solving one problem for a household, for a woman, 2 women, and 3 women in the village, and eventually a community, is the most important thing for me. And so we are moving in, feet on the ground, just trying to change one household at a time, one village at a time, to see that they can embrace a better livelihood. a better lifestyle
Yeah.
that is regenerative.
That's really beautiful. And I think it is worth mentioning, though, you said whether or not you're getting paid, but you've done all this as a volunteer from the very beginning, and the people who've been supporting you have been volunteering as well. It has all been
Yeah.
unpaid work. That's significant. That's an important aspect of the story. And that makes me want to ask if you could get any specific support or resources that you think would really help the projects that you're working on or to accelerate what you're already accomplishing, what would you want access to?
Oh, yeah. As you know, a project like this really needs a lot. And it's not just Cañeros. I look at doing a lot of projects in dryland. Cañero is just a spot where I'm learning from to see what actually can be done in different landscapes in this kind of climates and conditions. And this is just like a place whereby you're demonstrating that some things can change and some things can be done. But my mindset or my goal is to actually to empower a lot of women in especially semi-arid and arid regions in Kenya. And I'm not limited to just Cañeros or West Pokot. I'm talking about Turkana, I'm talking about Kilifi, I'm talking about different parts of Kenya that are really, really dry. I'm talking about Samburu, I'm talking about Masai areas and that kind of stuff. I'm talking about Mandera and going into really dry areas like Isiolo. You know, you are looking at really making these people see that just producing some small area of food can actually change a whole livelihood of a household and also the community.
Yeah.
And they don't have to give up. They can start very small and improve and improve and improve. And once they have this going, they will never stop, actually. They'll never stop. So we want to improve communities from just small few household, increase to few villages like that, and improve a whole big population in Kenya. How do I get there? I don't know yet. But I've started small and I want to grow. So whatever resources I get, I want to go into different areas and do just what I have done in Cañeros. Just to start small and show people that by themselves, they can do this. Just to motivate a few people in different areas, and they realize they can do this. Right now, even if I'm not in Cañeros for a year, I'm sure they will continue growing gardens. I'm sure they are continuing to grow pastures. I'm sure they are continuing to embrace these things. And other villages are coming to learn and extending spreading the word into other villages and into other areas. And it's starting to culminate into a system that is just growing by itself, which is something that is very nice. So if I got resources to be able to move into different areas and do same small demonstrations like we have done in this area, that would be a plus for me. Mm-hmm. However small resources you get, go put it here, plant a village, show them, let them move on. Go to another area, plant a village, let them see and learn, let them move on. And the knowledge just escalates the rest of the community members and they adopt and move on. Yeah. Yeah. That would be my model.
So with that said, Jane, how can listeners go and support your project? Where can they find your work and learn more about what you're doing?
Well, right now I'm starting to look for somebody to develop a website for me. And so I can share my knowledge outside. Right now we have a website that was designed. It's not so complete, but it's there. It's a wix.com kind of website, which is not so good finished, but it's there. I can share that with you on LinkedIn. I can share my email address in case anybody wants to give resources towards what I am doing. Sure. And they can get in touch with me. and then I can be able to give them a way in which they can disperse funds to my account or to the NGO account. If they want to promote the Cañeros project to continue directly, they can still do that. We have a CBO that is registered and it's non-profit and it has its own account. If they want to promote my personal work to move into different areas and do different same small projects in different areas and educate the women and empower them, the youth and the men, to replicate what I'm doing in Cañeros, they can reach out to me through my email address or PayPal account that I have through my email address. So I can still share that with you, my PayPal account, so they can still donate through that channel. And I'll be looking forward to doing more, actually, for different kind of.
So I'll share all of these links in the show notes for the episode, but what is the address for the website?
It's Boma Ecologia, BOMAIKOLOJIA, Boma
Perfect.
Ecologia.
All right, we'll make sure that's in there. And Jane, before we wrap up, what advice would you give to someone who is struggling to get their own project off the ground and maybe is not got the resources that they think they need to get things started? What would you tell them?
First of all, you cannot get resources to start doing something. You can only start doing something and probably people will see what you're doing and say, okay, we can help you do this. So I just want to tell people that your commitment and your first input to whatever you want to do is very important. So just do something and show people that you're doing something, and then people will be interested in helping you move forward. But if you just sit back and say, okay, I'm looking for money to start doing this something, that's not going to work so well, because everybody out here is not just going to put money in something they have not seen. They are not sure whether it's going to happen or work. So the reason why people have partnered with my project is because they saw us commit ourselves to do what we could do without any resources, and we got the project off the ground without any resources, and we volunteered and we did what we can do in small measures, small by small. So unless you start doing that something and show somebody that there's something you're doing about what you want to do, or whatever project it is, nobody's just going to give you money to start that.
That's really good advice for so many different endeavors. And I want to thank you so much, not only for taking time to have this conversation with me, but for serving as one of my favorite project references. When other people ask me how to get started or what can I do with low resources and such, I almost always point them directly to what you're doing. So thank you for being such an inspiration.
Thank you so much, Oliver.
Now, before we wrap this up, just remember that these episodes are only the beginning of the learning resources, design and coaching services, in-person courses, and interactive community that are available through Regenerative Skills. The Discord server is our free community where you can connect with other like-minded listeners, exchange ideas, stories, tips, and resources, as well as interact with me directly and quite a few former guests from this show. Our Instagram account @regen_skills is the best place to see the projects that me and the team are working on, both for clients and collaborators, as well as on our own properties. I'll also be announcing the certification courses, workshops, and gatherings that we've got coming up later this year. If you're interested in getting dedicated support for your own project, you can now schedule a free planning session with one of our team members through the request form on our website. You can also find all the links, show notes, and past resources there at regenerativeskills.com. We truly believe that no matter your experience, your knowledge, abilities, resources, or background, you can be a powerful force for regeneration on this planet, and we're here to help you find your path. So as always, remember to keep taking those little steps every day towards a regenerative future, and I'll be right by your side along the way.